The first problem that was solved was chemistry to biology. This was solved by Richard Dawkins. He wrote about it in his book The Selfish Gene in 1976. A lot of people have a big problem with thinking of life as a giant chemical reaction. But if you walk to the store, buy some food, and eat it, you use your muscles to burn energy, and then you digest your food and get more energy. And that means a lot of chemical reactions every step of the way. If you meet the man or woman of your dreams, then go to the store, buy some food, take it home, cook it, have them over for supper, and then get married and have a baby, you're still using your muscles and your brain and burning energy and eating and digesting your food and getting more energy. So that's still a lot of chemical reactions every step of the way. So where did all those chemical reactions start? They started with your genes that you got from your mother and father in the fertilized egg, and the other chemicals that were in the egg, and then the food your mother ate while she was pregnant with you. All of that turned into your arms and legs and eyes and brain and heart and stomach and everything else you used to make all those chemical reactions happen for the rest of your life that would lead to you eating and staying alive and having children someday. What Charles Darwin discovered was that evolution depends on three things: replication, variation, and selection. He figured out how characteristics get passed down from generation to generation. He never knew about genes. First, parents have children. That's the replication. Parents pass their characteristics on to their children, but they don't pass them on identically. So siblings get different combinations of their parents' characteristics. That's the variation. Then, if some characteristics help the children survive and reproduce in their living conditions, the children that have those characteristics tend to grow up and have the most children of their own. So more of that characteristic, instead of another characteristic, gets passed on to the third generation. Horses and donkeys, for instance, used to belong to the same species. Then the horses moved out onto the plains, and the donkeys moved into the hills. So the donkeys that were the best at climbing survived the most, had the most children, and passed on their climbing abilities to the most children. Meanwhile, out on the plains, the horses had to be able to run fast, so they passed that characteristic on to their children. To trace evolution down to genes, Richard Dawkins had to broaden his perspective. A gene is a molecule that starts a chemical reaction that makes more copies of itself. So the question is, what would a chemical reaction have to do in order to evolve? The answer seems simple now. Basically, genes give organisms their characteristics. So when organisms pass on their characteristics, they pass on the genes that created those characteristics. This is why he called his discovery the selfish gene. A lot of people have misinterpreted that and thought it gives them the right to be selfish because that's supposed to be some sort of natural law of the world. A lot of other people have tried to keep anyone from learning about it because they don't want the world to fill up with selfish people. He called it the selfish gene because a lot of biologists at the time were focused on the idea that evolution was supposed to work for the good of the species or for the good of the individual. So they had discovered a lot of things that didn't seem to make any sense. For instance, why do terminal diseases exist? If you catch AIDS, the viruses will use your body to make lots of copies of themselves, but then kill you. When they kill you, they kill themselves too. So, how does that benefit their survival? It's not the survival and reproduction of organisms that's critical to evolution. It's the survival and reproduction of the genes that create the characteristics that's critical. A virus is such a simple form of life that it's right on the border between being a life form and being a really complicated chemical. It doesn't have any purpose to its life. Viruses exist because they're things that keep making more of themselves. All you have to do is to pass the AIDS virus on to at least one other person before you die. Then some of the viruses from your body will get transferred into the other person's body, so they'll keep on making more copies of themselves there. So it doesn't matter that the viruses in your body will die when you die. The AIDS epidemic keeps spreading. So remember to do your part to help keep the AIDS virus from spreading. All of life is just a more complicated version of that process. Every chemical reaction in biology must contribute, in one way or another, to making more copies of the genes that started the chemical reaction. That's the entire field of biology in terms of chemistry. So book number 2 is The Selfish Gene.